Hello everyone, I am Demented Kirby, and welcome to my channel, The Commander Tavern. The Commander Tavern is a channel dedicated to my favorite Magic the Gathering format. The Brewery is a series on this channel showcasing my spicy brews and other deck techs. On this episode of The Brewery, I'll be discussing my take on the face commander from the Modern Horizons 3 precons, Omo, Queen of Vesuva. If you like this deck or any of the cards I'll be mentioning throughout the video, please consider using my TCG Player affiliate link when purchasing those cards. You can find that link down in the description. It'll really help out the channel at no extra cost to you. But the very best way you can help support the channel is by Patreon. There are plenty of perks for being a patron, such as early access to certain videos, exclusive deck techs, gifts, and more for as little as $1. You could also become a channel member for just 99 cents. Show off your support with a logo next to your name and exclusive emojis. Or you can always just support my channel for free by simply liking, subscribing, and sharing, which also helps out a lot. I put out a video every Monday, so you don't want to miss out. You can join my Discord server for free if you want to join the Commander Tavern community. All pertinent links are down in the description. Alright, let's get back to the episode. Omo is a 1/5 shapeshifter noble for 2 generic and 1 green-blue hybrid. Whenever she enters the battlefield or attacks, you can put an everything counter on a creature and a land. Everything counters make lands have all non-basic land subtypes and creatures have all creature subtypes. This is a super interesting ability as an incredibly unique and malleable to build around, perfectly suited for the palindrome named Queen of Vesuva. In my particular case, I went with powerful Lord effects and a focus on gates. Let's start with the Lord effects, since they have the potential of also winning us the game. If we have no other creature in play when casting Omo, we could just put the everything counter on her. She'll then be able to be affected by lords like Lord of the Unreal, Scion of Una, and Timber Protector. The first two give a small pump, but more importantly, give her Hexproof and Shroud respectively. Unfortunately, Scion of Una can't protect itself, but Lord of the Unreal can if it were an illusion, which is something the everything counter does. Timber Protector also gives a small pump as well as making Omo indestructible. Unfortunately, it can't make itself indestructible. However, since Omo can give everything counters when she attacks, you can also protect other creatures once you have these lords. Baru Wormspeaker, First Band Warchief, and Great Bordoyan are more offensive lord effects when compared to the previous defensive ones. On their own, they can benefit Omo. But once we're spreading everything counters, they'll be able to pump and grant boons to way more creatures. In fact, it's much easier with Maskwood Nexus since that solves the problem immediately. This is more than just redundancy for the commander. The only thing it doesn't do is grant lands all non-basic land subtypes. If that wasn't enough, we can also activate it to create shapeshifter tokens with Changeling. Sarath the Viper's Fang, Asceticism, Oran Frostfang, Archetype of Imagination, Shenchuan Lord of Wu, and Archetype of Endurance all have effects that don't care about creature subtypes. All of our creatures benefit from them. To me, these are the best ones I've tested for the deck, but you can definitely add whichever lord effects you want from among these, the previous ones, or others you're looking forward to including. Since combat is one way the deck seeks to win, Archetype of Imagination and Shenchuan are amazing since your attackers are essentially unblockable except for a few corner cases. Archetype of Endurance protects our entire board while also weakening our opponent's boards. And the Frostfang is amazing card advantage, especially when our creatures are unblockable, but we'll see the rest of the card advantage effects in a moment. For now, giving our attackers Death Touch is an amazing deterrent or interaction effect. Unblockable is also important so that Omo can attack without worry in order to get her triggered. Access Tunnel and Rogue's Passage are included just for that, all without taking up slots in the deck. You're essentially paying to get everything counters at that point. And of course for making a game-ending attacker unblockable too. As for those card advantage effects, Azami Lady of Scrolls and Seagate Lore Master are typo lords but still have the potential of drawing us a ton of cards in this deck. It might seem slow to be handing out everything counters only on entering the battlefield and combat, but recall that Maskwood Nexus is one solution to this. In any case, these are instant speed ways to potentially draw a ton of cards. Guild Summit also draws us a ton of cards on a different kind of typo effect since it cares about gates instead of wizards or allies. Apart from everything counters, the deck is running 11 natural gates, so this can draw us a bunch of cards on entering the battlefield as well as when a gate enters the battlefield under our control. Danny Pink and Goldberry River Daughter also synergistically draws cards. Danny draws us a card whenever a creature we control gets a counter placed on them for the first time each turn, while also having Mentor, which can also help with that. Goldberry does something similar but by losing a counter. Whenever we move all of her counters onto another creature, we can draw a card. What's interesting is that it can be any permanent, so if she had an everything counter, we can actually move it to a land and have it be relevant. Nesting Grounds does something similar but at sorcery speed though. However, the only benefit is having it not take up a spell slot in the deck. It's a shame that Giant Fan is disallowed in Commander solely because of the color of its border, especially since there are already so many black bordered cards with the same effect, but I digress. Karn's Bastion is also helpful as odd as that seems. With so many effects that can move counters, proliferating them means that we have another source of putting everything counters. So once something has 2, we can then move it to something without it, all without taking up a spell slot. Naru Winged Wisdom has a similar trigger to Danny and Goldberry, but it's whenever creatures we control get targeted by a spell or ability, so it'll trigger when Omo places counters on them. It'll also trigger if we equip them, opponents target them, etc. We can either cheat a land onto the battlefield or draw a card. Naru has immediately been established as a strong card all on its own. As one of the 99 in this deck, it's also pretty good. Lastly, we have Drawn in Dreams and Stroke of Genius because we have to have some form of non-synergistic card advantage in the deck. You could include Rhystic Study instead if you wanted to, but I am so tired of seeing the same cards each and every game over and over, so I avoid running it in my own decks. We can also make the most of Omo and her triggers simply by cloning her effects with similar effects that bypass the legend rule. Helm of the Host, Sakashima of 1,000 Faces, Sakashima the Imposter, Spark Double, and Auton Soldier. Not only is the Helm of the Host amazing because it creates hasty non-legendary tokens each combat, but it's 100% on flavor. Auton Soldier is also amazing here because it has Myriad, so whenever it attacks, it creates a token copy per opponent not attacked, getting those enter the battlefield triggers. Just keep in mind that while the original will have the attack trigger, the token copies won't, since they enter attacking and aren't declared as attackers. Clone effects like March from Velas Vale and Augmenter Pugilist can also help us close out games. I love March from Velas Vale. It's such an amazingly unique and interesting card, showing that there are still interesting idea spaces to be explored in the game. In this case of the deck, gates are the most common land type, but desert can also be chosen, and we'll see why in a bit. In any case, if we can turn all of our lands with the same non-basic land type into our best creature or hugest speeder, we could potentially end the game. As for Augmenter Pugilist, I've never played it as its front side, always casting it as Echoing Equation instead. This changes all your creatures into another creature. Best of all, this can also break the legend rule if necessary. This is also an amazing spell and I absolutely love it in this deck. As for copying a game-ending beater, look no further than Gatebreaker Ram. Any non-gate land with an everything counter is going to also be a gate, so there's a high likelihood that this thing will be huge. It'll also have trample. So imagine turning most of your lands into copies of it, or all of your other creatures into copies of it. It'll definitely end games. In a similar vein, Glaive of the Guild Pack can also be equipped to a creature for massive damage. Equipping it to an indestructible and unblockable Omo with hexproof is quite the clock. This thing is amazing player removal. While gates are this deck's bag, Dune Chanter is included to not only help out March from Velas Vale, but to also make sure we have perfect mana fixing. Not only are all of our lands deserts in addition to their other types, but we can tap them for any color. It might seem like overkill in a 2-color deck like this, but there are plenty of colorless land sources in it, so this is actually more relevant than quirky. Same with Yamamaya Cradle of Growth, which doesn't take up a slot on the deck. If nothing else, then all those colorless lands can at least tap for green. Shalatoyak the Smiling Flood can also help in that respect since it has a similar trigger to Omo, only that it turns those lands into islands in addition to their other types. As a bonus, it also untaps each permanent we control with a counter on it, which is insane in this deck. It's essentially a 6-mana 6/6 Seedborn Muse that helps fix colors. On the topic of spicy tech with counters, the deck is running Dismiss Into Dream. Keep in mind that Omo can put an everything counter on any target creature. With this in play, targeting an opponent's creature will force them to sacrifice it, indestructibility be damned. It also bypasses hexproof if they target their own creatures too. I love this card. Don't worry, we'll see more straight and to the point interaction effects near the end of the video. Alright, with access to 11 gates, it should be clear and obvious that Maze's End is the deck's main win con. However, not only will this win us the game much easier thanks to the everything counters, it's a land ramp effect, albeit somewhat slowly since it bounces itself and enters the battlefield tapped. But that's fine enough for the deck. We can still get gates thanks to Navigation Orb, Circuitous Route, Explore the Underdark, Hour of Promise, Titania's Command, Reshape the Earth, Open the Way, Expedition Map, and Sylvan Scrying. Granted, the first two are limited to basic lands and gates, while the others can get Maze's End outright, especially the last two, which is their purpose for me included. As a bonus, Explore the Underdark gives us the initiative when it resolves. Hour of Promise can also create 2/2/2 zombie tokens if we control Dune Chanter, so don't forget about that. Clearly, Reshape the Earth is a 1-card combo here since it could get 10 lands. If we don't already have Maze's End, we could just get it and 9 gates, assuming we never naturally played any of the other gates. Speaking of, here are all 10 gates in the deck. Most of these mostly just tap for mana and that's it. But a lot of these can still be used for multiple effects. Basilisk Gate is another pump effect like Glaive of the Guild Pact, which is very relevant, so keep that in mind. We can also keep Talon Gates of Madara in hand if we already have 10 gates with different names in play, just in case we need to phase out one of our creatures to protect it or a huge attacker coming our way. Horizon of Progress helps us bypass Mace's End by using its second ability to put it back onto the battlefield after it bounces itself. Yes, we'll need even more mana to pull it off, but this is a green deck. We're going to have a ton of mana since early on. Just Simic things. Sage of the Maze is another way to make the most of the gates, being able to turn them into huge beaters as well as being able to tap for a ton of mana if we tap gates to untap it. So it serves two key functions here. Mana acceleration early on and then game-ending beaters later on. Definitely an amazing card right from the precon. Root Path Purifier provides a similar effect to the Enchanter by giving our lands the basic super type. The deck has a handful of basic land ramp type effects, so this is yet another way to ramp for any land with those effects. Specifically, thanks to Monument to Perfection and Sword of Hearth and Home. If we manage to get this early game, then we can use both of these artifacts to get Mace's End and then keep getting gates until we eventually have the 10 needed to activate it and win. As a bonus, the sword blinks the creature too, which is great at resetting a clone or getting another ETB trigger from Omo. The Monument can also tutor for Locust lands, of which the deck is running all three. These might seem like a waste of slots in the deck, but I wanted to also keep the deck fun and interesting. Having these don't dilute the quality of the deck, and once you have all three, you can do a lot with them thanks to the everything counters. Same with all the Urza's lands. You can get any combination of these from the multiple any land ramp spells in the deck, and it's even easier to do thanks to Root Path Purifier. The first three are obvious since they only work amongst themselves, but the workshop is similar in that it'll tap per Urza's land we controlled, where if our lands have everything counters, it doesn't matter if they're not printed as such. The cave is another way to get Mace's End, so it's good regardless if it's an Urza's land or even a cave. The factory rarely ever creates the token since it's too expensive for just a 2/2. But the saga is amazing since you can get Expedition Map or even Soul Ring if you needed to. Just like the cave, it's another way to get Mace's End, albeit in a more roundabout manner. It's a shame that Urza's Funhouse is acorn stamped. Granted, that was a given since it could tap for infinite mana, plus it has a random effect similar to Urza Academy Headmaster, so it's understandable if this one isn't accepted to be run here, unlike Giant Fan. Interestingly though, Urza's Hot Dog Stand, a stickered playtest card from Gavin Verhey's Unknown event, is less silver-bordered or acorn stamped than the Funhouse, even possibly working in black-bordered Magic. But this one is technically not even a card since it's just a sticker on a card. But if you had one and your playgroup is fine with it, you could potentially have 9 Urza's lands if you included these 2 illegal cards. Returning to Commander legal cards, last but not least is Planar Nexus. This one has all non-basic land types, so it can be fetched for with Monument to Perfection and Mace's End. This is the quote-unquote 11th gate, but it's also the 4th Locust and 8th Urza's land, 10th if you count the last 2 illegal ones. As for the deck's interaction, naturally it's running Fierce Guardianship, an offer you can't refuse, Swan Song, Counterspell, Mana Drain, and Negate for its counter magic, Beast Within for single target removal, along with Cyclonic Rift and Whelming Wave for mass bounce. The last one also affects us, but it's essentially one-sided if we control the max with Nexus. In any case, it'll bounce most anything without an everything counter, so it's amazing here regardless. Heroic Intervention, Rapid Vigor, and Mutational Advantage help us against opponent's own interaction, with the last one having the bonus of also proliferating. Again, proliferating everything counters doesn't really do anything on its own, but it's helpful for moving them around to others without them. Lightning Greaves, Swiftfoot Boots, Champion's Helm, and Mithril Coat are included, even though the deck can still function without the commander. That being said, there are plenty of other creatures that can be protected, so keep that in mind. Omo is very easy to cast multiple times in a game. Are synergy and win cons? Not so much. The rest of the deck is just the rest of the lands. The deck's running Overflowing Basin, Flooded Grove, Rejuvenating Springs, Dreamroot Cascade, Command Tower, and Ancient Tomb, as well as one of each basic land. These are pretty straightforward and the best to run since they don't enter tapped and can give us our colors. This brew is just an idea of how to build around Omo Queen of Vesuva. As I mentioned in the beginning of the video, there are so many ways to build Omo. This makes her an exciting commander. I love cards like this here. So let me know in the comments how you built her or any interesting and obscure cards you're running in your own decks or just want to call out to me. If you're interested in the deck list of this spicy brew of mine, you can find a link to it down in the description. I would like to thank all my patrons for supporting me, and a quick shout out to all my higher tier patrons, the brewers, for their patronage. I'd also like to thank anyone using my TCG Player affiliate link, that also helps out the channel. I also want to thank any channel members, your membership is greatly appreciated. And to everyone, thanks for watching this episode of the Brewery on the Commander Tavern. I am the Meta Kirby, and happy brewing.